New Vegas is a pre-war monument glimmering in the nuclear glow of the New World. A one-of-a-kind neon sprawl, luring in gamblers dreaming of riches, but dealing out hands where the house always wins. Obsidian had a grand vision for the strip, but they found themselves in an 18-karat run of bad luck. This is the strip's development and cut content. Considering New Vegas is the title of the game, I expected a massive city on my first visit to the strip. In actuality, the scope and scale of the location falls far short of that description. This is accentuated by the way it's separated by two gates and has an underwhelming number of characters populating it. However, footage from the E3 press demo showed it as a much larger area containing no gates, more NPCs, and a significant number of cosmetic differences. The walls around the strip were made of concrete, much taller, and built much further back. This additional space allowed the player to explore along the sides of each casino. In this video, you can see guard towers like those found at Camp McCarran. Using a combination of videos and screenshots as a reference, we can tell they surrounded the strip on all sides. Considering how little cover there is on the strip, snipers in these towers would have made combat much more challenging. This early image shows the walls and towers once extended around Freeside as well. There was once an additional entrance leading to the tops. If you no-clip through this gate, you can still see it in-game. Some of this area is still modeled and gives us an idea of how it might have looked. The interior door is even present in E3 footage. In the final game, Benny walks over to this area, and his behavior makes more sense considering there was once an exit here. There's an alternate, unused version of the Tops promoter. It seems that both promoters would have appeared simultaneously, and that the cut version would stand outside the cut entrance. He actually has more dialogue than the one that is used.
Ready to tap your toes and snap your fingers? Don't miss Bruce Isaac, live at the Ace Theater. Fuck off, ass breath. You've already heard my spiel. You really gotta go see Hadrian. Don't miss the Lonesome Drifter, live at the Aces Theater. Songs so sad and lonesome, audience members of the opposite sex will be fighting over who gets to go back to the room with you, guaranteed. The Tops Casino, my friend. If you're in the mood to knock back a few and frolic the night away, ain't no better place on earth. Way I hear it, he's some whack job who used to spend his nights sitting around a campfire and howling to himself. Who wants to hear songs that make you want to cry? I try to tell them, but hey, they don't pay me to ask questions. Do me a favor, go see the show. Otherwise, they'll think I didn't do my job. A velvety-voiced cool cat fresh out of New Reno. That's who. When Bruce sings, his smoky, dulcet tones will transport you to another world.
The promoter who does appear also has unused dialogue due to an oversight.
Pull my finger. Please. I bet you could stop gambling. See Billy Knight, king of the one-liners, live at the Aces Theater. I had amnesia once, I think. See Billy Knight, king of the one-liners, live at the Aces Theater. If you miss it, you'll take your life, please. You know, like, is that your face or is a bowl of puke stuck in your collar? I tell you, you gotta see this show. One-liners, the epitome of comedy. Little nuggets of hilarity irresistibly bringing forth laughter.
One cut line in particular suggests these characters were meant to initiate conversations with the player. The player could tell the promoter to stop bugging them, and he'd reply,
Hey, just doing my job, okay? Sheesh.
Most notably of all, the strip was in nearly pristine condition and stood in stark visual contrast to the apocalyptic world outside. The road was preserved and there was no debris, dirt, or destroyed cars to be found. The ruined bridge by Vault 21 is missing, and even the plants have slightly different models. The outside of the Tops Casino is smaller, but still intact. In the final game, part of the casino is destroyed. There is also a weird door on the top of the Tops. I think it might have just been a level designer having fun though, as the perspective of the area doesn't work from this height. The interior of the tops was changed as well. The wallpaper wasn't as faded or torn, and the area looked generally much nicer than the final version. The windows of the Lucky 38 also lit up at night and looked pretty majestic. Unused nav mesh suggests that the interior of LVB Station was once a part of the Strip rather than its own cell. Traveling from Camp McCarran's monorail directly into the Strip would have been a great moment. In this early screenshot, the lettering sits on top of LVB Station rather than the side. It also had these cool stylized arches that were removed.
Howdy. Interested in a refreshing beverage or a tasty snack?
Code shows that a second street vendor was going to appear here too, but the NPC no longer exists. The street vendor who does appear had an AI package to wander around, but it was disabled by a patch. The Ultraluxe once had an additional building behind it. Luckily for us, the building still remains in the Wasteland world space. It also seems the tile sets for this building still exist in the test map world space. Though, it's certainly possible these belong to a different cut building on the Strip entirely. It's labeled as Hotel Kit and Filler Hotel. During the making of documentary, Josh Sawyer said, quote, "In certain patches of the Strip, you'll see whole casinos that are just hulking ruins that are blocked off. That's to show again, this place has been screwed up for about 200 years. It's possible he was referencing these fluff buildings outside the Strip, but I believe he was actually talking about this mysterious cut Hotel Kit building. Even a single unexplorable fluff building like this would have added a lot to the Strip's appearance." The fountain outside the Ultraluxe was entirely different and had some neat lighting effects. The assets for it no longer exist in the core game, but its original design can be seen in one of the loading screens. This was seemingly just a placeholder model though, as it was made from Fallout 3 meshes. This fountain eventually appeared, however, and can be found inside Higgs Village in the Old World Blues DLC. 4 generic NPCs once appeared in the Ultraluxe bath area, but they were disabled by a patch. The Ultraluxe also has a notable amount of cut dialogue.
Certainly you can buy the same drinks more cheaply elsewhere, but the point of drinking at top shelf isn't the liquor, it's the prestige.
I've waited months to get in here, but the place isn't nearly full. You think the waiting list is just for hype?
Marjorie has done a remarkable job managing the restoration of this place. Wouldn't you agree?
Our executive chef Philippe is the toast of New Vegas. His Brahmin Wellington is absolutely sublime.
Every evening, most of the White Glove Society sneaks away somewhere. It's probably just for show. I'm in heaven. I haven't had a meal like this in, well, ever really. Philippe has outdone himself again. For the price of this meal, I could buy a whole Brahmin, but I'd never make that trade.
Outrageous what Mortimer did. The nerve of some people.
Oh, Mortimer, you always had the gift of gaffe. Usually we punish people who come in here uninvited, but you've made such a splash, we don't have the heart. Your theatrics were just priceless. I salute you. Mortimer's vision was absolutely inspired.
Mortimer's vision was absolutely inspired.
Now it can be truly said that not only do we dress better than anyone, we eat better as well. I supported Mortimer from the beginning.
I supported Mortimer from the beginning.
Of course cannibalism is civilized. It's all a matter of perspective.
Of course cannibalism is civilized. It's all a matter of perspective.
Have you been inside our bathhouse? The salts in the water work to balance the bodily humors.
Have you been inside our bathhouse? The salts in the water work to balance the bodily humors.
To eat at the gourmand is to spoil the palate. I can't bring myself to eat anywhere else.
To eat at the gourmand is to spoil the palate. I can't bring myself to eat anywhere else. Usually we punish people who come in here uninvited, but you've made such a splash, we don't have the heart. Your theatrics were just priceless. I salute you. Now it can truly be said that not only do we dress better than anyone, we eat better as well.
At the far end of the Strip, there was once an additional entrance, and it used a completely different model than the one found in the retail game. A Securatron still hangs out around this cut gate, and was likely guarding it at one point. It's unknown where this exit would have led, but using the final game's geometry, it looks like it would have led directly into the wasteland right outside Camp Mk1.
Hey there, friend. A bit of advice. You look like you could use some protection. Lucky for you, I got what you need.
Mr. Holdout wore a trench coat in E3 footage. Perhaps this outfit was too on the nose though, as it was later changed to a suit. He can also be seen running up and talking to the player rather than calling out to them as he does in the final game. Walter Phoebus has an AI package that makes him pace around the Ultraluxe, while his wife Ethel follows behind him. This behavior was present in the original release, but was disabled by a patch. They were also meant to travel to and sleep inside Vault 21 as they're a part of the hotel's guest faction. However, the AI packages for this were either never created or deleted. A unique outfit called the Armored Vault 21 jumpsuit was meant to be sold inside Vault 21, but was omitted from the final game by mistake. Despite that, it can still be seen during the in-game cinematic and the Lonesome Road DLC trailer. There's an unused Securatron inside Vault 21. It was meant to be enabled if Sarah died for some mysterious reason, but it was left permanently disabled. I suspect it was cut because it wouldn't have made sense if the player killed Mr. House.
Vault 21's previous manager is no longer capable of servicing your needs. Hotel arrangement functions are now purview of Mr. House. Observe the rules, citizen. Proceed to your accommodations. Please, enjoy your stay at Vault 21. Vault 21 hopes to service your needs in the future. Goodbye. Predecessor's records indicate matching item purchased by nervous man wearing metal collar. Records indicate man requested free lodging and was directed to concrete building in Freeside. Transmitting coordinates.
There was a neat effect with the neon lighting outside the Tops Casino. I asked lead level designer Charlie Staples about this cut and the overall changes in the area. I think the neon effect was removed because the alpha on it was causing a performance hit on consoles. Most of the changes were in some way related to adjusting the strip to get it to perform well on consoles. Some of them were design decisions to work better with the other changes, but they were all centered around making sure it ran on console, reducing the number of materials loaded or unique meshes, etc. It all adds up. Some of the big things eating up memory on the strip were the NPCs and the number of unique props and materials for them. One of the tricks we used on the strip for the ambient NPCs was that instead of spawning and despawning NPCs as they walked around and entered buildings, was that we faded them out and teleported them to a new location so we could reuse the same NPC without a spawn cost, loading in new assets, etc. I asked lead producer Jason Bergman about these changes too. Yes, the memory issues were largely due to the number of NPCs. The BGS engine didn't handle multiple free-roaming NPCs all that well, which is why we had to cut down on the number of them drastically. But also complexity in building geometry was an issue. Load times were horrendous for a while because of it, and splitting up the strip was a relatively late choice, if I remember correctly. Maybe post-alpha, pre-beta, but don't ask me when those occurred. The schedule was so accelerated. I think all of the strip geometry that was made shipped in the final version. But if you look at the concept art, you can see the original vision was much more grand. Even the opening cutscene hints at a more opulent version, and that was made using game geometry, although up-resed. As Jason and Charlie mentioned, it became clear that the E3 version of the strip wouldn't run on console, so work began on a performance-friendly world space called the Strip World New. This new area added in gates to break up the long view distance and reduce the number of NPCs required. The strip is still a single world space, but these changes made a significant improvement to its performance. Area designer Jorge Salgado mentions this rework in a note that reads, "Update. The old structure is now obsolete after further iteration on the strip's layout and ambience. Many variables in this script are unused in the final game. I've kept them here for reference." Tall concrete walls dividing each section would have ruined the aesthetic, so billboard walls were used in their place. At this point, it seems the visual design of the whole area shifted to match the dilapidated, post-apocalyptic vibe of the new walls. There are also unused billboards that were meant to appear along the strip's perimeter wall. These were only seen during the in-game intro, unfortunately. Interestingly, the E3 press demo was run on the Xbox 360. This means that the rework of the strip, and likely of other areas as well, was due to the PlayStation 3. While both consoles had 512 megabytes of RAM, the PS3's was split evenly between its GPU and CPU. As a result, additional code was required to work around the console's inferior memory. For instance, when leaving Doc Mitchell's house after character creation, a check runs to see if the game is being played on PS3. If so, certain effects are disabled in the strip's world space. During my interview with Jorge Salgado, I asked him about the overall changes to the area, as well as the console-specific cuts. Yes, the strip started out as a fully open area. We went through several iterations. It was huge when I first joined the project, still crude and coming together. Compacted it, populated it, and finally added the walls to make the memory constraints of the consoles play nice with this expensive and centerpiece area of the game. As you've noticed, I made sure to disable some features for certain consoles. Nothing huge, but it helped with having the area run smoothly. It's worth mentioning that the E3 demo build was shown only 4 months prior to the game's release. In this time, Obsidian crunched desperately to get the strip into a working state, all while completing the rest of the game. During my talk with Jason Bergman, I asked him about this period of crunch. Final 3 months of development were bug fixes and scrambling to optimize. PS3 was virtually unplayable until about 6 weeks before submission. Less than 45 minutes of uptime and 10 FPS. Programmer Frank Kowalkowski pulled some serious last-minute voodoo to make it work at all. That guy is a genius. Obsidian had to cut everywhere they could, disabling NPCs, AI packages, clutter, and the aforementioned cosmetic changes. This is also why the walls were built much closer in. Just outside the player's line of sight, you'll notice that none of the structures are fully modeled anymore. There is, however, some interesting content outside the player's line of sight, like this guard tower behind the Gommorah. While these changes were significant, the biggest cut to the area was made very early in development. The strip was initially planned to be a massive open settlement, as shown in this concept art created by Brian Menzie. Menzie was responsible for the majority of FNV's concept art, as well as the iconic Pip-Boy drawings in Fallout 2. It's difficult to imagine just how impressive the strip would have been if this idea had been possible. During my interview with Chris Avellone, he expanded on the original idea even further. It's what happens when project vision collides with level design reality, unfortunately, and the same thing happened with the city of New Vegas itself. In fact, performance concerns are the reason it's built as it is, and has been called empty. For me, seeing the city surrounded by giant billboards was a disappointment in the face to the open world concept. But again, it's what happens when the reality of polygon management meeting the design of a city doesn't work in tandem, to the point of breaking the game or slowing the engine to a crawl. The strip is sometimes referred to as the street, and the terms were used interchangeably. It appears that at one point, the street specifically referred to Las Vegas Boulevard instead of the entire strip. Cass has individual lines for both the strip and the street.
The street, Vegas Boulevard.
No other characters have lines for the street though, so using the name in-game must have been abandoned early. You've probably noticed that you can't fast travel to the Strip directly. If you want to travel to, say, NCR Embassy, you're forced to teleport to the North Gate in Freeside and then pass through 2 gates before reaching it. Project Director Josh Sawyer revealed why there's no fast travel point on the Strip. It was poor planning on our part. A number of triggers were placed at locations that complicated fast traveling into the Strip. Because we did not want to endanger the critical path close to shipping the product, I decided that we should not move the triggers/fast travel point. Sorry. If the player had a poor reputation with the Strip, they were meant to have up to 3 encounters with a vengeful NCR MP. While it's possible to run into one of these encounters, the other 2 never occur as the code was never completed. If the player returned to NCR Embassy 7 days after the first encounter, the second meeting would be triggered. After another 7 days passed, the third and final encounter would play out. From his unused dialogue, we can infer that it would have taken place randomly somewhere outside the Strip.
Let's just say that people around here talk about you. They say things, not nice things. We only like to hear nice things, get it? So you either pay up to walk around here, or we're gonna make you pay up. That clear? Yeah, that's right. Now get the fuck out of our sight before we change our minds. You cheap bastard. Like all Mojave people. I'd beat you senseless right now if we didn't have more important things to do. You back again, huh? We missed you. We've been waiting for you. Bet you missed us, too. But this is not over, get it? We'll see each other again when you least expect it. That's not gonna cut it anymore. You've become a pain in the ass around here. Double that or we're gonna box your ears. Think you can get away with this? Guys, time to rough this one up. Hey, think you can walk around here like nothing's happened? See, my friends and I, we were kind of wondering if we should give you a good beating right now, or save it for when we catch you outside. Well, hello there. What a coincidence finding you outside the Strip. We don't like you, Mojave scum, and we like you even less when you fuck with our Strip. You should have paid your dues, but no, you had to play hard, huh? Now it's our turn. Nobody fucks with the NCR and lives to brag about it. You're dead, punk.
There are 2 unused markers called Street Goof 1 and 2. Strangely, one spawns 2 pillows and a mattress at a 45-degree angle on top of the Gommorah. The other makes lawn furniture and a bucket appear on NCR Embassy. It seems that special encounters were meant to occur at both, likely involving drunk NCR soldiers. Far outside the Strip's world space, there are some unused crates, and it looks like this is how the player climbed on top of NCR Embassy for one of these encounters. There's also some other cut stuff in this area too, including lights and generic NCR soldiers. Speaking of these special encounters, there's a scene where a NCR soldier chases a Brahmin through the streets. It appears there was meant to be a second Brahmin involved. Both the Brahmin and soldier disappear after passing through a gate, but they once ran across the entirety of the Strip. In another scripted scene, drunk NCR soldiers make their way back to the monorail. 2 lines of dialogue from this sequence went unused.
We need to stop and pee soon.
Can't believe we have patrol duty in the morning.
The infamous fountain scene also has some unused dialogue. Most of the lines are alternate takes by different voice actors, suggesting the lines were meant to be randomized and spoken by different actors in different playthroughs. There is also 2 takes of an unused line.
Where's your sexy friend, Vic?
Where's your sexy friend, Vic?
Notably, some of these dialogue topics are called "Get Out, Biatch." There's an unused animation intended for this scene called NV Fountain Exit 02, and it's much more entertaining than the animation that was used. Inside Michelangelo's workshop, there's an unused room disconnected from the playable area. If we no-clip through the wall, we can check it out. It's empty apart from some random geometry, and there's really no telling what it was intended for. It appears the workshop was also meant to be accessible from a back entrance. Perhaps these missing doors once led to the cut part of the workshop. The entire area behind Vault 21 and Michelangelo's looks like it was once explorable as well. Outside the player's line of sight, there's an additional road that extends to the perimeter wall, along with streetlights, varied terrain, and debris. If the PS3 had additional memory, this area likely would have contained additional casinos, buildings, NPCs, and quests. Sarah from Vault 21 and Kate both have reactions about Michelangelo's death that never play in the final game.
Mickey he's no longer alive. I'm sorry, but I just can't go on.
I've been taking care of the shop since Michael. I've got to look forward. Someone's got to bring beauty into this barren world.
An unused message reads, "You have not won enough at this casino to play this game." This reveals there were high roller versions of each casino game that probably had a higher betting minimum/maximum and were unlocked by winning a set amount. High stake games would have made for some awesome moments. It's also likely that Craps was once planned as a casino game. Craps tables can be found inside the Lucky 38 and Tops, and sound files were even recorded for them. While this would have been cool, between blackjack, roulette, slots, and caravan, FNV had enough minigames. There are remnants of a generic casino bouncer who likely would have been stationed at each casino entrance. There are several unrecorded lines, most notably, "Hold up, you look new to Vegas. I'll keep it short, no weapons allowed inside the casinos." He also has a few cut recorded lines.
"Come back by here when you're done at the tables. Nice try, wise ass. Now hand everything over before you make a second mistake." "Oh, now, what a surprise. Someone trying to smuggle in weapon. Look, jackass, the job's rough enough as it is without troublemakers like you. So either hand it all over or take your caps elsewhere. You just made a big mistake."
The Gommorah has an unused third floor. While there's furniture and randomized loot, there are no NPCs or anything really worth talking about. Josh Sawyer revealed why this area was cut. Gommorah, even as it's shipped, was large and difficult to navigate. Several quests have to snake through that labyrinth, and having additional levels actually detracted from that experience. There is also an unused cell called Gamora Placeholder. Its visual design is totally different than any other part of the Gommorah because it was created for testing. A super mutant named Angel was going to spawn somewhere inside the Gommorah. Angel is even a part of the Omerta faction. It's possible this character was meant to be an escort or perhaps hired muscle. This green stripper cage once appeared inside the Gommorah, but it was later patched out. There were also 2 strippers in cages that were removed by a patch.
I don't know what's happening to me. I can't feel a goddamn thing anymore. Empty and poisoned like the wasteland.
During the quest Bye Bye Love, the player helps Carlitos and Joanna escape from the wrath of the Omertas. After completing the quest, both Joanna and Carlitos walk into Freeside before being disabled. However, both characters have dialogue implying they were meant to reappear somewhere else in the Mojave.
I'm happy to see you again. Carlitos and I have been living here since our escape. We'll never forget what you've done for us.
Hey, friend. It's good to see you again. This place doesn't have the glitter of the Strip, but I've got Joanna. That's all I'll ever need.
Discovering these characters by chance and hiding would have been a great moment.
I don't want to fucking hear it. You've lost the trust of the family. Goodbye. I hope hell isn't too hot for you.
During the quest How Little We Know, the player recovers a weapon shipment from a generic band of fiends. An unused script reveals the shipment originally appeared inside Vault 3, and this subplot between the factions would have been a nice addition. After recovering this weapon shipment and giving it to Clandon, one of the Omerta's mercenaries, he disappears from the casino. He can potentially spawn inside a jail cell in the NCR MPHQ on the Strip. He has no dialogue explaining how he got there, and there isn't even a penalty for killing him while imprisoned. That's because the relevant quest objective was disabled. The player was meant to show Clandon's snuff tapes to Marie Pappas, the leader of the NCR MPs.
Murder? What kind of murder? Do you have any proof? Okay, this is a very serious accusation. Please, be sure to bring me something concrete. Well, that's something. But I can't go in there without proof of foul play. These are terrifying. Do you have any idea who the man is speaking on this tape? Well, come back here when you can. I'd like to take care of this as soon as possible. Come back here as soon as you do. I'd like to see this asshole behind bars. Clandon? Okay. I'll send some troops over there to bring him in.
After convincing Marie to arrest Clandon, 4 NCR MPs would be enabled inside the Gommorah, and they'd make their way to this marker to arrest Clandon. This conversation would play out before Clandon followed the MPs to the prison.
Clandon, under the authority of the New California Republic, I place you under arrest for murder.
What? Are you fucking kidding me? You can't do this. The Omertas aren't going to stand by and let you arrest me.
The Omertas have no say in this matter. This is a legal matter now. You'll have to come with us.
All right, I'll come quietly, but this is fucked.
Cachino even has dialogue about his arrest as well.
Yeah, we saw the troopers come through. I can't imagine things are gonna work out well for him.
As a result of this being cut, the NCR MP headquarters and Marie Pappas serve no real purpose outside a few lines of exposition. Another cut quest called Jailhouse Rock seemingly involved the NCR MP headquarters as well. There are 4 unused NCR MPs related to this: Les Fretwell, Trooper Willis, and 2 generic henchmen. Les Fretwell remains permanently disabled behind the MPHQ. Their dialogue sheds little light on what the quest involved, however.
Hi, I'm Fretwell. Fretwell again, brah. Freddy at 30. Yo, I'm Willis. Trooper Willis to you, punk. Me again, a-hole. Why not? Henchman number 1, yeah. Henchman number 2, bro!
Hey there, sugar. I'm Dazzle. What can I do for you? Or to you?
Dazzle, one of the sex workers at the Gommorah, has dialogue about the cut post-game state.
All those NCR troops should see me to celebrate. Come one, come all. I'm not letting the Legion make me a slave. Even I have standards. Guess it's true what they say. The House always wins in the end. No Mr. House, no NCR, no Legion, no rules. New Vegas is gonna be just one wild, never-ending party.
Speaking of Dazzle, her and the other characters the player can fuck were going to play orgasm sounds before the fade to black sequence. However, these sounds were set up incorrectly, and some characters are missing the code for them to play at all.
Yeah!
Oh, Daddy! Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah, that's the... Oh!
Gommorah is spelled incorrectly in the game files. Area designer Akil Hooper even noted this in the Wild Wasteland credits, saying, "We should have named it Sodom. I bet these motherfuckers would know how to spell that." An unused quest objective reads, "Visit your private suite on the 13th floor of the Tops." This reveals the player once received the Tops private suite as a reward for breaking the winning limit at the casino. This was probably cut since you received the Lucky 38 presidential suite not long after visiting the Tops, making it somewhat redundant. Despite that, it would have been nice to have a choice of different player housing.
Sure, baby, sure. Tommy's always looking for new talent to bring to the Aces.
During the quest talent pool, the courier finds various entertainers to perform at the Aces Theater. There's an unused variable revealing that a bounty hunter was hunting one of the entertainers, Bruce Isaac. The variable reads, set to 1 after the player has encountered the bounty hunter on Bruce's trail. Bruce Isaac's entire character was seemingly based around this interaction, as he's lying low in Novak to hide from the wrath of the Bishop crime family. He mentions he slept with Mr. Bishop's daughter, which is a nod to the Chosen One's potential actions in Fallout 2. Presumably, the player needed to either kill this bounty hunter or at least get him off of Isaac's trail. The Lonesome Drifter, another act the courier can recruit, is heavily implied to be the son of the Mysterious Stranger. If the player has the Mysterious Stranger perk, this NPC will appear randomly to kill enemies in VATS. Due to a lack of time, the Mysterious Stranger can actually appear in VATS and kill the Lonesome Drifter, his own son. Josh Sawyer revealed that the team had other plans though. Really wish we had the time to hardcode that so the Mysterious Stranger would kill you. It's really too bad this idea was cut, as it would have been perhaps the best possible way to die in FNV.
Give me a home where the big horners roam, where the mole rat and the fire gecko play.
After the completion of Talent Pool, the Lonesome Drifter and Bruce Isaac performed 4 unique songs: Cobweb and Rainbow, Streets of New Reno, New Vegas Valley, and Home on the Waste. All of these songs were actually sung by Josh Sawyer, as he revealed in a Twitter post. There's not much of a backstory to Streets of New Reno. We needed a small number of songs for the performers at the tops after Talent Pool was completed, but we hadn't actually decided on/licensed anything. We realized this fairly late on the project and didn't have many options, so I suggested writing variants of folk songs to be performed with James Mullally and Nathan Chapman on guitar. That's what we wound up doing, later adding a variant of Cobwebs and Rainbow to a low-cost instrumental track we found somewhere. I expected very few people to ever hear them, because Talent Pool is kind of a long quest, and you have to return to the tops at a specific time of day after finishing the quest to hear the songs. Most people didn't know they existed. That changed when Bethesda made Home on the Waste the Ultimate Edition trailer music.
Baby, your generosity and spirit of forgiveness? Off the charts. This little care package is everything I need. I'll take it from here.
If the player spared Benny's life and helped him escape the fort, he was meant to make one more appearance. It's unknown where or when this event would occur, but he has several recorded lines for the confrontation. One line notes that he was ambushing the player while using a stealth boy.
Thanks for getting me out of there. Now for once, will you just lay down and stay down? No one rules Vegas except me, got it? You're a low-down gopher, you deliver mail. How you like being Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, eh? How's it feeling? How you like being Miss Goody Two-Shoes, eh? How's it feeling?
Considering the courier destroyed his plans for New Vegas, I think this final act of vengeance was in character and would have been a great addition. However, this would ensure that Benny died in every potential outcome of the main questline, so it's probable this was cut to keep his fate ambiguous. Even further, there'd be no possible peaceful resolution for pacifist players. Benny also has one of the best cut player lines in the game. When talking to Benny for the first time, the player could state, "Here Benny, special delivery, punch Benny in the face." Perhaps Obsidian didn't want players to immediately punch Benny in the face during every playthrough though.
What in the goddamn?
During one of the possible outcomes of the quest Ring-a-Ding-Ding, Benny escapes into the sub-basement of the tops. The sub-basement is typically inaccessible, but it can still be explored through console commands. Interestingly, it's actually an unused area within Vault 21. There is still some random explosive loot, but there's not much else remaining as it was never completed. Regardless, it's still pretty cool to check out. At one point in development, the courier would have chased Benny through these tunnels and out into the wasteland. Josh Sawyer commented about this on Tumblr. The tunnel was always a part of Vault 21. The chairman essentially blew a hole in the wall between the vault and the tops, and another hole out of the vault / the strip. It's his way of getting on and off of the strip without needing to actually walk down the strip and out the gates, which would be noted by Mr. House. I knew Jorge Salgado designed Vault 21, so I had to ask him about the chase scene. That's correct. The idea was that a tunnel connected to V21 would lead all the way past the walls of the strip and into the wasteland, an escape route for Benny. He can still escape from you, but we did away with the segment of the chase that transpires in V21. More than lack of time, it just felt better. Chasing NPCs through levels with transition loads and all isn't the most elegant thing to do. There are 3 pre-war notes that were meant to appear somewhere inside the Lucky 38. Unfortunately, all 3 notes are otherwise blank, but they likely would have expanded the lore of either the casino or Mr. House. In the final game, the basement of the Lucky 38 is only accessible for a single scene. The player is warped in, then warped back out, and can never return under normal circumstances. However, Victor has an unused elevator line revealing the player could return to this area at their leisure.
B2, physical plant.
While most of the area is blocked off by a force field, the area beyond it has nav mesh, implying the Securatrons were meant to patrol the area rather than just stand around. There's also code for the player being hit by or attacking the Securatrons during the upgrade scene. Its cell ID, Basement 4B2, suggests there was an additional Basement 4 once planned. There's an inaccessible elevator door beneath the floor of the Lucky 38 casino, and perhaps that is the last remnant of this missing 4. If the player attacks the Securatrons inside the Lucky 38, Mr. House's questline is immediately failed. At one point in development, Mr. House activated a lockdown on the building instead. The elevator would only allow access to the casino floor, and the Securatrons would become hostile, forcing the player to leave and wait 24 hours until the lockdown was lifted. There's cut dialogue for the elevator being unavailable.
Aggressive acts on the casino premises will be met with lethal force. Vacate the premises immediately. Vacate the premises immediately. The casino is off limits for 24 hours. Vacate the premises immediately. All Securatrons are at a state of high alert.
The cut quest objectives suggest there was a way to circumvent this and kill Mr. House anyway. Mr. House also has around 20 unused recorded dialogue lines that would have played in various areas of the Lucky 38. After the player betrayed Mr. House, he would have taunted or attempted to reason with him. These lines are seemingly connected to the lockdown event, as some of them were set to only play after the lockdown had been engaged multiple times.
You dared come here after what you did? What do you think you're going to do? Fight your way up to the penthouse and assassinate me? You came here to finish what you think you started? This is nothing compared to what's waiting for you up in the penthouse. Vegas will still rise again. Your betrayal won't defeat me. The Lucky 38 will be your grave. I'll finish what Benny couldn't get right. Think you're doing well to have made it this far? Your chances of breaking through my defenses, they're minimal at best. Why are you doing this? I would have made you wealthy. You could have helped change the world. You're actually going to do this all over again? Damn it, will you die already?
Finally, as the player reached his control room, Mr. House would plead for his life.
Hold on. Now hold on. Just a moment. Turn around and leave and I won't attack you any further. Just stay away from the console. It doesn't do anything. You've come back to kill me this time, I assume. Ironic how this turned out. The thousands of hours I spent calculating odds, running projections, planning for every contingency, only to be done in by a mail carrier with a grandiosity complex.
If the player had destroyed the Securitron bunker, he'd ask them to kill him.
Get it over with, will you?
Intrigued, I asked Area Designer Jorge Salgado why the lockdown was cut. I was not responsible for that portion of the Lucky 38. In that area, I helped with some scripting, especially with the scripts that govern the Securitrons and what that would mean to the strip. But in the end, the lockdown feature was more trouble than it was worth. For design reasons, we decided to have Mr. House not lock down the tower if he became angry at the player. He takes more drastic measures in that case. Unfortunately, the scripting for the scene would have never worked as it was reliant on the quest being completed and then restarted, something impossible in the engine. This is potentially why it was eventually cut. If the player idled around the Lucky 38 before speaking to Mr. House, these lines were meant to play.
Hello, come over and introduce yourself. Come now, don't keep me waiting. I invited you here so we could talk, not so you can nose around.
During the main quest line, the player travels to the Securitron vault and either upgrades or destroys them. Mr. House has cut missing lines that were going to play here, similar to the lines that would have played during the lockdown. This area also has disabled dialogue with Mr. House and a cut objective. Originally, the player needed to destroy one of the power regulators to trick Caesar into believing the vault had been destroyed.
I see. You're in a predicament. Just off the turbine room down below are 3 power regulators. It's a redundant system. Only one is needed. Go ahead and destroy one. The explosion will be large enough to be heard and felt above ground.
In the final game, he's tricked no matter what, creating a bit of a plot hole.
I felt the ground shake a while ago. I'll take that as a sign you've got the job done.
This suggests that Caesar and the Legion would have become hostile if the player didn't complete this objective. Mr. House had a much different and much creepier face in E3 footage. This was likely just an early placeholder and never intended to actually appear. During Mr. House's questline, you're forced to destroy the Brotherhood of Steel. However, the House Always Wins Part 5 has an unused quest stage that reads, Optional. Inform Mr. House that you've negotiated a peaceful solution with the Brotherhood. At one point in development, if the player destroyed the Securitrons at the fort, Mr. House would concede the strip to the NCR. An unused note reads, Upon further reflection, I have determined that it is in my best interest and the best interest of the New California Republic to transfer sovereignty of the Vegas Strip to the NCR. If all terms are agreed upon, annexation would occur 1 year from today. A, I am to be granted full status as a citizen of the NCR and immunity from prosecution for any activities prior to annexation. B, I will be recognized as the sole proprietor of the New Vegas Strip, a commercial property. C, I will be subject to all laws of the NCR, including personal and property taxes. D, NCR functionaries will police the strip. I will retire my Securitron police force and limit their movement to the grounds and interior of the Lucky 38. Please confirm that these terms are agreeable. I do not foresee any objections on your part. Robert Edwin House, President, CEO, and sole proprietor of the New Vegas Strip. Despite being cut, many generic NPCs can still play dialogue about this story event.
Be advised, when Mr. House transfers sovereignty over the Vegas Strip to the NCR, he will remain its sole proprietor. Have a nice day.
I never imagined Mr. House would concede to the NCR. I wonder what convinced him.
Both sparing the Brotherhood and surrendering to the NCR were cut as design decisions. This was done to make the player's choice to betray Mr. House more difficult and represent his uncompromising nature. Mr. House Last Will Testament is a recording that was supposed to be broadcast along the strip once the player killed Mr. House.
I, Robert Edwin House, am deceased. Please approach a Securitron and take one of the printed obituaries. If this statement is being broadcast, I am deceased. Please approach a Securatron and take one of the printed obituaries.
This event would have explained how the entire Mojave knows about Mr. House's death right after it occurred. Caesar even mentions that he's already read House's obituary.
I've read Mr. House's obituary. Had a high opinion of himself, didn't he?
In the final game, though, the player receives the note without any explanation of how they got it after killing Mr. House. René Auberjonois' voice acting is one of my favorite aspects of FNV, so it's too bad that any of his lines were cut. Sadly, he passed away last year. Rest in peace, dude. After exiting the Lucky 38 for the first time, the courier meets Emily Ortal, a member of the Followers of the Apocalypse. She has dialogue about Benny, but the skill check tests her perception instead of the player's. Since the check requires a perception of 6 and her perception is only 5, these lines can never be heard.
Ugh, so gross. It was bad enough that I didn't get any data out of the Securatron. This is why I didn't want to talk about it. It only happened once. I chalk it up to sleep deprivation and one atomic cocktail too many. I take it you're speaking from experience. You're right, though. He's gone now, so I'm not gonna let it bother me anymore. Thanks. That's sweet of you to say, even if it isn't true. Good point. And maybe you should go jump off Hoover Dam, jackass.
Emily gives the player the quest, The Moon Comes Over the Tower. In this quest, the courier fails to bug the Lucky 38, and it's one of the most inconsequential quests in the game. From start to finish, it can be beaten in well under 2 minutes, and there's no meaningful outcome or decisions to be made. I literally just completed the entire quest in the background. It's that short, but that's because the majority of it was cut. The terminal inside the Lucky 38 casino would be initially inaccessible. The player needed to disable the Lucky 38's network encryption from 3 executive consoles scattered around the wasteland. These terminals can still be found at Camp Golf, New Vegas Steel, and H&H Tools. As a result of this being cut, the latter 2 locations have no quest associated with them. It seems that hacking these terminals would provide information about Mr. House's secret room and the Lucky 38 VIP keycard. This item can be found at both Camp Golf and H&H Tools and is used to unlock the secret room in the penthouse. After attempting to use the secret room terminal for the first time, unused quest objectives would send the player to find one of these cards. While this key was once part of the critical path, it's essentially useless in the final game. The official guide even mentions that the executive override function allows access to the control room. It's very possible that this information allowed the player to deactivate the lockdown state we talked about earlier. After disabling the casino's encryption, the player could then bug the Lucky 38. The terminal you bug has an unused skill check that reads, "This network access point can be monitored by the Followers of the Apocalypse with some adjustments to data routing protocols. Science of 50 or greater required to monitor the Lucky 38's data network." There are also 2 deleted quest objectives, but their markers still remain on the floor of the Lucky 38 casino. One is placed above the ceiling, and the other is above the elevator. It's likely that these led the player to objectives on other floors of the Lucky 38. These point to the player performing reconnaissance on the entire building. It seems possible this is a remnant from when the Followers were a major faction. In a previous video, I talked about how they could once possess the Platinum Chip, and I suspect this quest was intended to be a part of their main quest line. Perhaps most interesting of all, the Lucky 38 reactor is referenced in the quest script for The Moon Comes Over the Tower. The quest objective reads, "The Lucky 38 reactor is being powered by the El Dorado substation, but the quest objective for this no longer exists." The reactor still remains inside the basement of the Lucky 38, as does a terminal that reads Inactive Core, and it required a science of 85 to repair. Passing this check would enable a cool effect with all the pistons moving around. After it was cut, the force fields were added into the basement to stop the player from interacting with the reactor or seeing the entire area as it was left unfinished. Josh Sawyer revealed what happened with the quest. The Moon Comes Over the Tower was a quest that went through a number of designers over the course of the project and never really received focused attention from anyone. It feels unfinished for that reason. After completing The Moon Comes Over the Tower, Emily Ortau was meant to travel to the old Mormon fort, but she never actually goes there. She has greetings that only become available inside that world space, and as a result, they can never be heard in an unmodded game.
Thanks again for helping with Mr. House's data network. Come see me at the old Mormon fort if you get a chance.
If the player refused her quest, she was meant to travel to and sleep inside Vault 21, just like Walter and Ethel Phoebus. She was also intended to wander around the Strip. Repairing the Lucky 38 reactor was cut from The Moon Comes Over the Tower and recycled for the main questline. During the quest, the courier helps Yes Man or Mr. House power up the Lucky 38 via the El Dorado substation. In the final game, the player is confusingly told that the substation has been powered up. The original cut message told the player that the substation is now powering the Lucky 38 reactor. Perhaps the original message was cut after the basement was made unexplorable. After powering up the Lucky 38, these quests have a cut objective where the courier met up with Yes Man or Victor. Overlooking the Strip, Yes Man or Victor would give a speech as the Lucky 38 lit up in the distance.
Hi there! Come with me, just to the top of the ridge up here. See that? Vegas, right? Same as always. But not tonight. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pretty nice, huh? But that's not all. Now that the Lucky 38's reactor is fired up, Vegas doesn't need the dam to have power. Vegas is energy independent. Woohoo! If we keep the dam running, we can sell all its electricity to the NCR for a nice profit. Vegas doesn't need it. Hope to see you soon.
Howdy, partner. Let's skedaddle. Got something to show you. It's just at the top of the ridge here. There you have it. New Vegas. Purty as a diamond flush. Well, Rambler, it's a royal flush that beats all. So let's crown this hand. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeehaw! Ain't that pretty? Don't take in the view for too long, though. Word is the Legion's on the move. Head on back and see the boss real soon. Here, evening.
The script notes and related dialogue imply the effect was meant to be visually impressive, but the developers didn't have enough time to polish this scene properly. It would have been a great moment of reactivity to be exploring out in the desert and see the Lucky 38 shining bright in the night sky. Once the player powers up the reactor, steam sprays out from a sewer grate near the Lucky 38. There's a second steam effect set up outside Vault 21, but it's always disabled in the base game.
I'm Jane, one of Mr. House's girls. We keep him entertained. We don't get many guests lately. Perhaps we can entertain you as well.
In the Collector's Edition card set, you'll see 2 Securatrons, Marilyn and Jane. These names are a tip of the hat to Hollywood starlets Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell, 2 real-life friends, one of which who acted with Howard Hughes, who was himself an inspiration for Mr. House. Marilyn is present in the Lucky 38 penthouse, but she's disabled. Veronica even mentions her in a line that can play in the final game.
What'd you think of Mr. House? I was surprised he only had the 2 robot sex slaves.
Jane's dialogue is strangely labeled Marilyn Jane, which suggests their dialogue might have cycled back and forth like the think tank in the Old World Blues DLC. An unused player line suggests the player once bought upgrades for the presidential suite through Marilyn rather than the terminal used in the final game. Marilyn and Jane both appear here as well, but they're disabled and never used. Apparently there was an issue with her voice lines, and that's why she was cut. It was thought there was no record of these lines, but it turns out that Marilyn's voice actress, Laura Kane, had a video of her dialogue on her YouTube channel all along. This single line is the only remnant of her dialogue.
Hon, I'd really rather not talk about Mr. House right now. You should ask Jane. I'm sure she could tell you all about him.
Laura Kane voiced a handful of characters that actually made it into the game, thankfully, like Red Lucy, Trudy, and Emily Ortal. There was meant to be a method of seducing Mr. House that was only available to female couriers. According to unused variables, Mr. House would express interest in the player and then invite them inside a secret room. The player would then be scanned inside the unused Lucky 38 player pod. I assume this room was larger at one point in development, as the pod wouldn't even fit inside the final area. Intrigued, I asked Jason Bergman about the Lucky 38's original layout. I vaguely recall something about scaling back Mr. House's rooms, but his questline came in late, and what did get in was super impressive, so it's hard to remember. Mr. House has several unrecorded lines regarding this, including, "Was it just me, or were there signs of attraction earlier?" and "Would you like to scan me again?" There are also two empty dialogue topics, scanner before and scanner after. It seems the purpose of all of this was to gain access to the secret room without setting off the alarms or having to hack the terminal. Avoiding these security measures would have made killing Mr. House much easier. Raul's dialogue suggests this is how Jane and Marilyn's Securitron personalities were created.
I remember there were some weird stories about him, especially near the end. There was a tell-all in El Periódico de las Aburridas by a starlet house dated. She said they never, don't make me spell it out, boss. Anyway, she said all he wanted to do was scan her brain and make her dress up in different outfits.
If this had been implemented, perhaps a new Securitron would appear with the player's visage. It's sad this was cut in particular, as it's such a wacky concept that it harkens back to Fallout 1 and 2. The Securitron near the terminal that unlocks Mr. House's secret room was meant to warn the player to stay back when they approached. There were at least 3 separate attempts to make this work, but each is flawed. In the final game, the player is never warned to stay away from the terminal. If the player breached the secret room, a NPC hidden behind the elevator was meant to play an alarm line, but the line is unfortunately missing. The secret room also once had 4 turrets inside of it. Between the turrets, the Lucky 38 being locked down, needing the VIP keycard, and the Securitrons that are already present, it would have been much more challenging to kill Mr. House, and perhaps that's why they were cut. In the final game, Mr. House has surprisingly few security measures to protect him from the player. During my interview with Area Designer JR Vosvic, he revealed that House's control room was not only much different at one point, but that it appeared inside the penthouse world space. The house chamber was originally a small side room that is now the passage to the elevator. I had time to expand this and wanted his chamber to come off more as an Emperor's chamber than him just being shoved into a small side closet, hinting at his ego and the scale of the life support systems required to keep him alive. The Emperor's chamber idea is basically what's in there now. I set up everything for his room, but didn't make the model. It was Brian Menzies' concept, I believe, but don't know who modeled it. I'd guess Kevin Manning. He is a super talented character artist. Then I worked with Sean Stewart to connect the animations to the sequences. I vaguely remember plans of the 38 being some sort of missile defense system or laser tower. So Mr. House sitting at the controls with the big chamber would have been a cool visual. There's still empty space where this area seemingly once appeared. If you clip through the penthouse ceiling, you'll even find a floating door called Inner Secret Door, and it's likely the entrance to Mr. House's cut control room that JR referenced. This concept art by Brian Menzies gives us an idea of how the control room was first envisioned. There is even unused water designated for the Lucky 38, and perhaps it was left unused after the original vision was scrapped. In the intro cutscene, Securatrons are heard using their police sirens. This never happens in-game, but would have been a nice touch when they became hostile. Some of the Securatron dialogue is completely broken. The lines for many of their dialogue topics aren't randomized, so only the top line can play. As a result, players who only experienced the vanilla game missed out on 2/3 of these lines.
Please do not use your weapons. Thank you. Be advised, assaulting an officer of the law is a serious offense. This behavior is not on file. Be advised, an explosive has been thrown. Assaulting an officer of the law is a capital offense. An assault has been perpetrated. Response in progress. Engaging. Innocent visitors, please disperse. Threat detected. Destruction of law officers is a capital offense. Firing grenades. Relocating. Excuse me. This area is off limits. Please vacate. Leave the vicinity immediately. Thank you. Heavily engaged. Threat level elevated. Homicide is a serious offense. Homicides will not be tolerated. That does not belong to you. Theft is not a victimless crime. Interpreting sense data. Target unconfirmed. Searching for target. Canceling search. Halting search. Target lost. Attempting to reacquire. Target lost. Analyzing. Target lost. No further action needed. Target lost. Returning to non-combat operations. Still analyzing. Still attempting to reacquire target. Target reacquired. Target found. Engaging. Canceling search. Have a nice day. Halting search. Have a nice day. Unconfirmed threat detected. Searching. Unconfirmed threat detected. Use of force has been authorized. Entering combat.
There's also dialogue for the Securatrons to comment on story events that affect the strip, but due to the way they're set up, they can only be played by the Securatrons inside the Lucky 38. They have cut lines warning the player to return to the surface. It's completely unknown what these lines are related to, however.
Area is off limits, citizen. Return to the surface, citizen. Disobedience will be punished.
The Mk1 Securatrons on the strip have an incorrect damage threshold of 0. All other Mk1 Securatrons, like the ones inside the Lucky 38, have a DT of 20. They also have dialogue meant for the cut post-game state that would have changed depending on which faction the player supported.
Welcome to Vegas, capital of the 6th state of the new California Republic. True to Kaiser. Welcome to New Vegas, where a new day is dawning. Welcome to Vegas. Don't make trouble.
Jane also has a line about House's victory after the second battle of Hoover Dam.
See? Mr. House has everything well in hand.
Yes Man has a couple of unused faces named as Angrytron and Sadtron. It's worth mentioning just how much love and effort went into the Securatrons themselves, as animator Sean Stewart noted. Working on the Securatron was a grand adventure. He was one of the main characters and part of the main narrative of the game. The player spent quite a bit of time hanging out around the Securatron. The Securatron creature had just over 80 animations and 5 weapon types. It was fun trying to figure out where he was hiding all 5 weapon types and how to get him to equip and reload them. I had a blast working with the character artist who molded him. We worked out how to switch screens, switch weapons, and blow off his body parts. We got him to vibrate a bit all the time. That way it looks like some type of car engine was working somewhere beneath his exterior. I used a lot of little tricks I've collected over the years to make this implausible character look plausible. Good times. A handcrafted climate was made specifically for the Lucky 38 penthouse and cocktail lounge. Strangely, the urban world space climate was used instead. I'm not sure if this was an oversight or cut on purpose, but the area looks noticeably better at night utilizing the correct climate. Victor has unused lines meant to play after the player used the elevator.
All aboard right away. Heading up, heading down.
He also has a line used to announce arriving in the cocktail lounge.
Cocktail lounge.
This was likely cut because the cocktail lounge and penthouse share the same world space. Victor and Jane both have unused lines that would have played after the player betrayed Mr. House.
You low-down snake. I wish I'd left you in the ground to rot. Draw!
Oh, sugar, why'd you have to go make Mr. House mad? Now we've got to get all messy shooting you to little bits.
There's a test map called Lucky 38 Penthouse. The cell is an unfinished version of the penthouse that appears in the final game, but notably there's a human version of Mr. House called Mr. House Outdated. This character was never intended to actually appear though. At one point, Mr. House's terminal was a talking activator that relayed outdated House's dialogue. This ended up being more trouble than it was worth, as the lines were ultimately played directly from his terminal instead. Years later, Josh Sawyer revealed how he would have redesigned the strip. In retrospect, we should have partitioned the different neighborhoods of New Vegas into their own world spaces, data/load-wise, and found ways to emphasize more vertical elements. When we worked on the various DLCs, we did emphasize vertical elements much more in both exploration and combat. To end this episode, I'm going to do a zoom out to give you an idea of just how much passion and effort went into creating this area multiple times. While many of these cuts were minor on their own, together, they significantly impacted the strip's atmosphere, layout, and appearance. Obsidian's original vision for New Vegas as a massive, opulent cityscape would have been a sight to behold. Ultimately though, all of this was left on the cutting room floor.